All right, I've welcome back for the episode of Carnivore Trades. Today is Monday, July 24th, 2023. If you're not done so already, please give the video a thumbs up, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Come find me on carnivoretrades.com for swing trading alerts and analysis. Anyways, let's get into it today. So, markets here kind of mixed, but fractionally higher for the most part. Spiders closing at 454.20. Talked about this in the short this morning. We should probably be pinned to right around 45.50, and that's pretty much right where we closed, just 4 points above there. Although we did have lots of chop shop for the most part today. And we'll probably see that tomorrow is my guess, unless we get some sort of exogenous news, because we are waiting on Microsoft, Google earnings, and then of course the FOMC Wednesday. So markets may be a little bit on the quieter side again tomorrow. If we look at the spiders, just 49 million shares today, as of 4:01 Eastern time. Let's look at the triple Qs here. Yeah, pretty light, 38 million shares there. So again, very, very light volume, all things considered. And right now, as far as technicals are concerned, we are into this trend line here on the Qs. Kind of coincides with the 20 moving average, loosely coincides with the 20 moving average here. We'll see how that reacts tomorrow. Do we get a bid off of that? Do we come down and test it again on Wednesday post FOMC? We'll see. So 380 is also a line in the sand. We talked about this last week. We failed to close above that on a weekly close. And I think if you get this trend line to break here, that's when you could start to see a bigger correction in tech, right down to that possibly the 50 moving average, which again loosely coincides with this larger trend line here. And of course, we have the catalyst for that could be, we had Netflix and Tesla, which came off the lows today, but they did underperform post earnings. Then we have Microsoft, Google, and then of course the rest, I believe the following week, Amazon, and of course the big dog Apple. Could you get some sort of sell the news that puts us into a bigger correction? That's possible. The Qs were up the least today, but we did have energy bottoming, or at least making a nice move, XLE, and that's what brought the spiders up versus the rest of the market. XLE having a nice day here today, up 1.61%. We'll talk about that in a minute. But right now, the narrative is and has been that inflation has bottomed, or inflation has peaked rather. I think it's kind of the other way around. Take a look at gasoline, up 16% for the year now, up 3.31% today. If you can get a weekly close above this red bar high, you've got a little bit of a level there at 291 and then 3. But this is curling back up year over year, which is how CPI is calculated. Well, you look where we are today, it's flat to a year ago. That does not look like inflation is falling. Let's look at wheat. Big power move off the lows here. I'm kicking myself for not getting in on this. Up 8.6% on the day. That's flat to a year ago. Crude, that's starting to catch up. It's still not quite flat to where it was a year ago, but you get this to, push back up to the 82.50 area, which it looks like it wants to do. Then we're talking about being very slightly lower to a year ago. Soybean oil, or soybean futures, that's higher than where it was a year ago. Corn, flat to where it was a year ago. Does look like we're starting to see some signs inflation is potentially bottoming. We'll talk about yields in a second as well, but something to look to moving forward. But right now, Fed funds rate is above the 2-year Treasury note yield, so the market doesn't care. And obviously, we have a little bit of time until the next CPI, and this is something that can take a little bit of time to manifest. But right now, markets are hanging in there. There's no real problems technically. Spiders up 40 basis points today. And you're above all 4 major moving averages. So the market can hang in there for now. 4,600 again could be a magnet to look for to the FOMC, maybe even a pierce of that. And then obviously this trend line is coinciding with that same one there on the triple Qs. So if we get breaks of either of those, could trigger bigger moves to the downside. But again, there is still kind of a little bit of a rotation here kind of going on. Again, some of these big tech names have slowed down a little bit, and you're seeing healthcare get a little bit, although it was down today. But you had a big surge last week, so that's fair. XLF also having a nice day. Regional banks we'll talk about in a minute. But we are seeing a little bit of rotation possibly out of tech. And it's just some of the kind of old world stocks here. But so far, no real damage, again, on the charts. And until that, says otherwise, this market can go higher. Dow here making new 52-week highs. Again, kind of old economy stocks getting a bid here, blue chips. This is not necessarily, in some ways it's bullish because you're seeing rotation, but I also never really like to see the Dow lead just because it's blue chips. So, just bear that in mind here, but no real problems right now. Obviously, next level right around 355, which we basically hit today. Nice little pivot there. That's also a weekly high, so a lot of resistance in that zone here. But Dow had a nice breakout last week, so that's holding up okay. Russell 2000 was just fractionally higher today, up just 0.25%, but still no problems here. You had a good sign of strength there, getting above 191.74. And, on the weekly, you closed above that 100-week moving average as well, so that may want to go up and test 200. So we'll see what it does right now, but no real problems currently. SMH here, flat to positive. Again, that's also kind of hanging off of that short-term trend line there, and that 20 moving average loosely correlated. Could be a little micro inside bar there on the daily, so you got a bear move with volume. You could be consolidating that if you go sideways for a move lower, but the trend is up, so again, we have to respect that moving forward. But watch the semis here. They are a leading industry group. They will tell you a lot about the market. IGV also kind of following through a little bit to the downside from last week, although it held, essentially this old pivot. So if we go back, there you can see right there, it's essentially where we held. If you break below that, then we can talk about maybe 340, 345, 346, and then possibly down to 340. But right now, IGV just a little bit of a pullback there. So we'll see how that behaves next week, but no real issues. Dow Transports had a little bit of a dump first thing in the morning. It was like first 10 minutes, and then right back off the lows there, and really just kind of pinned sideways all day long. No problems here either. Transport's holding up okay. Inside bar, it is overbought, so it probably does need to do some backing and filling, but this can still get to 16.5. May need to do some consolidating to get there, but no problems there on the DJT right now. All right, over to interest rates here. So let's go and flip over. So the 2-year right now, finishing the day above 4.91.5. Again, trend is up. We're back above the moving averages. I said this weeks ago. I said, look, we'll hit this area. It'd be highly unusual to break through a double top, just blowing through it like that. But you've put in a higher low, and this can go attack it again. It's starting to curl back up and do that. Why this won't mess with markets yet is because the Fed's going to raise rates on Wednesday. They're only going to raise 1/4 point, though. So, and we can see the 2-year, once it gets going, like it can go. So initially, if we break this double top, it's not going to scare the market because the Fed funds rate will now go from 5.08 to, 5.25, 5.3, whatever it is, whatever the effective rate essentially ends up being at. But, again, let's try it here. There we go. So 5.2, 5.3 is right here. It's not that far away, right? Like we've gone from, back here 4% to 5 in really a month. Even right here, we went from 3.63 to 4.63. Again, in less than a month. So the 2-year can go when it wants to. And right now, it's holding up. 5 years, holding up. 10 years, holding up. I just don't believe here that inflation has peaked. I think that we saw a peak, but I think it has bottomed now. So rates are telling us that. I think commodities are starting to tell us that. You look at gas, corn, soybeans, crude, wheat, starting to see some signs here. And then we're seeing the XLE stocks, energy stocks, which we'll talk about in a minute, start to curl back up and start to show signs of bullishness here. So could be something to keep an eye on as we get into the fall. Again, I don't expect the market to really care. But next couple of months, if these trends continue, the market will care, and especially if that 2-year really starts to take off. XHB continuing to pull back a little bit. It was up 31 cents today, but inside of that move from last Thursday, this probably can get down to 80. Sometime next week, you probably get like an ABC down. It is overbought still, but again, still making new highs. Same thing with ITB. That can probably get down to 82.50. But again, still making new all-time highs for the most part. And until you break trend, it's still very strong. So just be aware of that. VNQ, again, so 1, 2, 3 hits. I think I would call this kind of like a cluster here. So this is kind of like your third hit. I don't expect it to break out yet. I'm not saying it can't, but usually that third hit will be a fake out. But again, another sign of evidence here that you're seeing kind of rotation out of tech. This is starting to push higher. We talked about that 84 level for the longest time, and it finally established above that. Now a little bit of consolidation, and it's trying to peak above this area here. So VNQ shaping up much better. I still think it needs to base a little bit more, but nothing to say this won't go up to 90 at some point in the near future. XLF continuing to be strong. We talked about 35.50. It's above that. 36 is your big level on the weekly. So there's your red bar high, 36.24. That's going to be the big weekly resistance there on XLF, but it's holding up right now. KRE trying to peak up here above last week's high. I still think it needs to base a little bit more. You got a lot of selling here. Look at the volume, right? 100 million shares in a day on KRE. That's, historically high. So lots of, anybody who bought down here is kind of stuck, right? Same thing here, 45, 48, 49, 50 bucks. So I do think you need to base, but when you get short squeezing, you can push up. But these still look okay right now. Unless proven otherwise here. KBE, same thing, looks fine. Broker dealers, I believe that's a new all-time high. Yes, it is. A new nominal high and a new closing high for the broker dealer. So that's holding up again. We talked about 520 if we look on the weekly, right up in that area, potentially retesting those old trend lines there. So broker dealer is still holding up well. All right, crude we talked about already, but this is starting to look interesting. Trying to break above this. I'd like to see it establish, maybe back test it and then hold up. But right now, nothing to say this won't go to 82.72. You get a weekly close above 82.72. This is going a lot higher. Your first big level probably be around 93 to 95. But again, we got to get a weekly close above here. But right now, we negated this red bar, weekly close above that. And we got back above this trend line too on a weekly close without having to gap up on BS OPEC news or anything. Like the market just did it on its own here, which I like a lot more. And you got through all this consolidation here. So I'm liking the look of oil here. I'm not going to chase it, but it's getting interesting. XLE, it's above the weekly resistance level. We still got 4 more days. We still got the FOMC, and we got Exxon Chevron on Friday. So we don't want to get excited and jump the gun yet, but you get a weekly close above that. Guess where it's going? Right there. So that's your next big level there, 92 or so on the XLE. XOP, also new highs there, new highs past last week. We talked about 140 area being resistance. We pulled back off of that. We'll see what kind of pattern this puts in. And then the OIH just won't give me an entry here. New 52-week highs on OIH. This should pull back off of double top. I thought it would pull back here as well, but I mean, you look at the monthly and, if we get rid of these lines here, I mean, that's a pretty strong pattern that wants to go up and test that 100-month moving average. I just would love a pullback here. We'll see if we can get one off of that double top. But energy is strong. Why are these stocks going up if it's all over with? So OIH holding up. Nat gas inside day had a big surge Thursday, 1-2 pullback there. That still looks good. Don't see any issues right now. Dollar index getting a bid again today. We talked about getting a counter trend bounce to 102, the 20 moving average, possibly 102. We'll see how that behaves there, but that did close near the highs of the day, so dollar holding up okay. Gold pulling back as well, closed below this green bar, so a little bit of a negative there on the daily. And again, on the weekly, we talked about this as well. We rejected that 20-week moving average and that weekly red bar high. So again, it's not like a death sentence, but if it's strong, it should be able to reclaim those areas. So a little bit of weakness there right now for gold. Silver also pulling back 35 cents today. And again, 25.50 we marked as resistance. It's pulling back there. We'll see how it reacts to those moving averages right around 24. You got all three of them sitting right down there. That's a triple necktie. It's very rare to see that. But we'll see. I'd like to see how it gets into that level there. On silver futures, platinum trying to hold 960. Not convinced this one wants to go up or down just yet. I would love to get this one cheaper as well. And then palladium, still looking for one more dump there. I'd like it below 1100. Copper up 71 basis points here. But I still think this is on the weaker side and still needs to go lower, but it's holding up just okay for now. All right, so lastly, as always, Bitcoin here. Took a little bit of a dump today and then kind of stalled out at the 50-day. So bear is really unable to break the 50 moving average here, and we are coming a little bit off the lows. Nothing crazy here. We've seen this before, right? So we had big dump right here, the next day right back up, big dump here, next day big surge. Even down here we had dump, and then all of a sudden led to a huge rally. We tried to break out this time and it came right back down the next day. So I'm not convinced of anything till we see follow through on Bitcoin. I'm still bullish here. Weekly chart is just fine. So nice bullish inside bar there. Above the moving averages, 20 moving average catching up to price. I don't see any problems here. This could very easily be a shakeout. But, until proven otherwise, this is bullish. If it starts to break through these levels here, especially on the daily 28.5, then we can talk about more significant weakness, but I don't really see any problems right now or any reason to really bail on it. All right, so lastly, tomorrow, expect a little bit more of a quiet day, potentially, unless we get some news. We're waiting for earnings. We're waiting for FOMC. Trend line, clear as day there on the daily. Same thing there on the Qs. We'll watch that moving forward. Watch those commodities. If you start seeing crude really push higher, gasoline push higher, it's going to be really hard to I don't know. The government's going to have to work really hard to get those CPI numbers down with their magical formula. So that's my take on it anyway. Watch the bond market as well. Yield's still creeping up. That's telling us a lot too. Anyways, guys, going to wrap it up here. You guys take care. Come find me on CarnivoreTrades.com. Talk to you guys all tomorrow.